let's get rolling. The order of operations that I like to use when I'm rebuilding these boxes is first drill this rivet and liberate this bell crank using the drill guide that's supplied with the Super Pin. Then we'll get the Super Pin installed and tuned up. From there, we're going to work from the top side to replace the side-to-side cable end bushing through this access hole, and then we will drill our access hole on the passenger side of the box that's going to allow us to replace the front to back cable end bushing with everything installed in the car. I like to shim the ball, just tightens up this little ball socket. Then we'll install the first gear getter. Then we'll put this bell crank back on to the Super Pin. Really at any time we can do these shaft bushings. Ultimately, once all the slop is taken out of the cabin shifter, we'll go ahead and perform a shifter alignment using our 5mm pin. As I mentioned before, the first step is going to be using our JB Weld's 2-part epoxy to affix this drill guide over the head of this rivet. So it's going to allow us to drill a 5/16 inch or 8mm hole right here, which is going to liberate the bell crank from this forward pivot. We size the landing ledge of this drill guide such that it fits most of these rivet heads. This one, though, happens to be a little bit bigger, and as you can see, it does not fit flushly. So what I've done off camera is I've modified our drill guide by measuring the diameter here and selecting the appropriate sized bit, and I just skimmed this so that it'll fit on there squarely. Now that our drill guide is going to fit true with our bell crank, we'll just use our 2-part epoxy here. We don't want to go crazy. That's about 3 times more than we need. We'll just affix this here and hold it, and we're just going to use a rubber band to keep that drill guide nice and true. We're going to set that there and we're going to walk away. We'll be back with you after this has been set up. Okay, now that our epoxy has fully hardened, we can remove the rubber band and drill the rivet head using our 5/16 or 8mm bit. It's very important that you use this size bit because the Super Pin is sized for the hole that this bit's going to make. Now this is going to be bolted in your car, so it's not going to move. I'm going to flip it on the side so we can better show you what's going on. We'll grab the drill and the safety glasses, and yeah, we're just going to carefully drill on center using the drill guide. All right, when you're finished drilling, you can just break the drill guide off, and this bell crank will be liberated from the forward pivot. And we'll just set this aside, and we'll remove the old pin here, as well as the dinky bushing that these cars come with. It's just a single bushing, and because it only has support on 3 sides, they tend to get flat and create a lot of play. So once that's out of there, you can go ahead and wipe the grease out of this hole, and we can start installing our Super Pin. Our Super Pin comes assembled like this, and we have a free spinner side with a black washer, and this is the big end. There's a step here, and then on the other side it's a gray washer, and it's smooth, and this is a lock nut, so it only threads on about a turn before it stops. And the pin gets oriented like this, with the black bushing facing the left side of the car and the gray bushing on the right side of the car. And the gray bushing we're going to insert in here. The black bushing is going to go in here. We split them, just expect that, that's normal. Press them on in here, and then we're going to check our fit. What we want is for this pin to slide in here all the way, and we want this edge to be flush, but sometimes what happens and what's happening on this car is that our nominal diameter of our shift box is a little bit small, and so our pin is actually binding in our bushings. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get in here and we're going to have to remove a little bit of material. Now, most cars, that's just going to fit perfectly, but we are just especially lucky today. What we've prepared is a piece of sandpaper. This is 220 around a felt tip pen, and it's going to act as a sanding stick. And so we're just going to work and remove material here until we achieve the fit that we're looking for. And so we'll just sand a little bit and then we'll check our fit. Still tight. Pop it out. Keep going. All right, so this is actually feeling really good. So starting to feel really good. Yeah, we still have a little bit of a drag there, so I'm going to sand a tiny bit more, but we're getting almost there. That's really right where we want to be. You can just rotate it between your two fingers. So let's check out the other side. So that's the gray bushing. And that's a little bit tight. All right, so we're probably about good there. So we'll pop our bushings in, and then remember the big side is on the left of the car. And so we'll just guide this in here. And what we're looking for is just being able to turn this between our fingers smoothly without binding, but also not having any up and down play. And once we've achieved that, what we're going to do is we're going to position the shoulder of the pin here such that it's flush with the black bushing when it's threaded in all the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to start our lock nut here, and it's only going to go on about 1.5 turns, and then it's going to stop. As you can see, our landing ledge here is moving around. So what we'll do is we're going to counter hold by the wrench lands on the free spinner side while we tighten up the lock nut. And we're just setting the depth of the pin using the lock nut. We want the ledge to just be even with the flange of that bushing. So that is our adjusted super pin. If you want to test fit, is we just guide our bell crank back over the pin using the bell crank here, counter hold, just snug this down. You have it set up right, and in neutral, it'll move, it'll pivot freely and return to center like it's supposed to, but it's not going to have that slop that you had before. The Super Pin includes a new side-to-side cable end bushing, and that side-to-side cable end bushing is visible through this access hole here, and there's going to be a bottom plate on this shift box. But yeah, this is your opportunity to get to your side-to-side cable end bushing. And if you're not doing a Super Pin and you want to replace the cable end bushing, you have to go from below. But by divorcing the bell crank from the forward pivot and installing a Super Pin, you have access to this bushing. Now on this box, this bushing is in really good shape. We're going to leave this one alone, but if you want to replace the cable end bushing, you reach in here with the pry tool, free the bell crank from the cable end. What you'll be working with down in the hole is this cable end, and it's important that you don't bend this any more than you absolutely have to, because this cable is in a tube here, and so if you pull up on it real aggressively, either the side to side or the front to back, you can kink this tube, and then if you bend this tube, you end up having to put a cable in it. But there is enough movement here that you can pop that bushing out of there and install a new one. But this is for demonstration purposes. We have a cable end here, but you install it in the eye. It really doesn't matter which side the flange is on. And it's a press fit, it's a precision press fit. And you can work it on there. And then since the factory bushing has little teeth, we include a clip because you're not going to have any way to hold this on there. And so you have this little black spring clip, and it just slides on here like that. All right, so the next phase of this project is the front to back bushing, which is this guy. The front to back cable is the one that's attached to the bottom of the stick. When this bushing fails, the stick will just flop back and forth because the cable will fall off of the ball. The factory bushing is actually bonded into the plastic cable end. So unless this bushing is really falling apart, we recommend that you leave it alone. To replace the cable end bushing, you remove the snap ring. These bushings are partially split so that they'll snap over the ball. And then you take your cable end, which is free of any bushing remnants. You push it on, give it a little bit of a wiggle back and forth. You can completely see the landing ledge for that snap ring. And then install the snap ring here. All of this is quite difficult to access if you go at it from below, and so that's why we recommend that you leave this box installed in the cabin and drill an access hole on the right side of the ship box, and we're going to be using a 1 1/8" hole saw. The body of the car is right here, and you have this weatherproof gasket, so all of this is inside the car. There's no chance of water ingress. You basically just want to sight down vertically on axis with this cylinder here that the bearing sleeve is at. You want to be about as low as you possibly can on that line without that hole saw bumping into the painted body of the car. And that's going to be about right here. And that's our access hole. We can't see the bottom of the cable just yet, so we're going to do a couple of things here to improve access. The first thing is we're going to go out to the car and we're going to disconnect the front to back cable from the counterweight, and that will allow the cable to move freely back and forth. Next, we'll go back inside the car. This stick is kind of trapped by this ball socket. The ball socket is held down by these catches here. And so there's 4 catches, 1, 2, 3, and then 4 what we'll need to do is push inward on all 4 of those catches while we're pulling up on the stick. One thing that makes that easier, since you're kind of compressing this whole ball in on itself, is to remove this bridge. This bridge doesn't do anything, just there for the injection molding of that part. Basically what you do is you take a screwdriver and compress that in and then twist it while at the same time pulling up on the stick. So that one, there's 2. And then this guy here, there's 3, 4. We can just take this, flip this back, and then we've got pretty good access to that front to back cable bushing. Then you can reach in there and install the replacement bushing as I demonstrated earlier. After you've completed the installation of that front to back bushing, or you've taken a look at this and decided that front to back bushing is actually in pretty good shape and you don't want to mess with it, you can actually slip a shim between the outer casting and the socket sleeve, which improves the feel of the shifter because it reduces slop in the ball socket area. You want to be about 3/4 of an inch wide and no more than 4 1/4 inches long, because 4 1/4 inches is the distance between the lower guide and the edge. The longer a shim or the thicker a shim, the more you're going to close the ball down. Generally speaking, you want to use a cardstock. So this is the FedEx envelope that a lot of our products come in. This is a piece of a timing belt box. Serial box is a little bit thick. Most business cards are pretty decent. And so what you do is you just guide this in here while your lining catches back up. And then once you get everything lined up, you just drop it down and you'll see those catches. That one's engaged. The other 3 are hanging. So you can just push down. Push down pretty hard if you need to. There. And now we've pulled a bunch of slop out of that ball. These are available new from the dealer, and it's an improvement if your socket's super smoked, but the precision on these parts is just not there, and so you're never going to get the feel that we achieve with the shim by just replacing the part. Okay, so next step in our rebuild of this Mark 6 shifter box is going to be to replace the first gear getter. If yours hasn't fallen off, you just reach up from below and lift this tab. We are going to epoxy and mechanically affix our high performance replacement first gear getter onto this aluminum nub. The first step is to make sure that the aluminum nub is free of dirt and oil and grease. So I've got a little bit of solvent here, brake cleaner, but isopropyl alcohol also works. Make sure that's nice and clean. From there, we're going to dry fit the first gear getter onto the nub. We have a 3/32 inch hole right here at the end. We're going to drill into this nub down about 1/2 inch. So we'll just set our drill down in there, and then we're going to mark 1/2 inch or so. All right. Pop our fig back off. Wipe this off once again. All right, now we're just going to get our epoxy down in the fig here. It's probably about enough. Slip that on there. I put way too much, so we've got it coming out the hole and coming out the hole again. We'll just push it on there all the way. And then we'll take our little baby, number 440 bolts and washer. We'll just get this guy started. And we'll just go ahead and thread this in. Until it snugs down. And it'll start to get pretty tight because you're threading that aluminum that you drilled. And you don't have to go crazy. You just need enough on there that it binds that washer. We can get our spring in place. So sometimes this will trip people up, but you just got that one leg and you take the other leg here and you flip it on down. Next, we'll take our bell crank and we'll slip it back on because we've already set the depth on our first gear getter. Spin our free spinner down. And as I mentioned before, you don't want to go crazy because you can snap this. So really, if you just counter hold between the bottom of the bell crank here and your wrench and just squeeze those two parts together with your fingers, that's all you need. We're just going to let this set up until that epoxy is fully cured. Since this epoxy on our fig has been given plenty of time to cure, we're going to do our shaft bushings. So what we'll do after we've removed the boot, press this upper shaft bushing so that it can get free of the clip here. And then we'll slowly relax that. And you see how the stick just fell? We really don't want to disturb it when it's in the down position, so you kind of just want to hold this up. If you jostle it back and forth when it's down, sometimes the hook can get stuck with the cable end and it's a little bit of a fiddle to get it to get back to where it needs to be. So anyway, you just slide those off. And so what I did there is I just let it come down a little bit and then I just pinched it all together here. If you take your bushing out, or if your bushing's totally crumbled and there's still bushing in this hole, now is the time to get it out. Either flush it with solvent or blow it out with compressed air or reach in there with a pick. You just need to get all that old bushing out and this needs to be clean. You're going to slide it on here. Again, I'm holding the stick up. So you can just reach in here with a screwdriver and just turn it ever so slightly to spread it while you guide it down. The reason that getting the old bushing out is so critical is that if you don't, then that old bushing will close that slot down and it'll bind the stick and then it'll be stuck down or it'll be stuck up. And then we'll just drop our spring back on and we'll compress it, drop the upper, compress it, and while we're compressing it, we'll just slide that clip in. And that's all there is to that. The last little bushing, which is an optional part, goes in the engine compartment. This is our super slider. It replaces this plastic bushing down here. Installation's pretty easy. Basically, all we have to do is release this clip. There's a catch here and a catch here, and we kind of have to spread them both simultaneously. Just get those catches over the barb there. Set this aside. We can just back that guy up. A little factory plastic sliding piece, we just reach in here and pop it off the ball. Our super slider. Click on into place. We'll just bring the slider back into the channel in the front to back, and drop our clip back on. Okay, so you're all done, almost. You just have this 5mm pin left, and this pin is for performing a shifter alignment. It's just like getting a wheel alignment after new tires or new suspension. This pin goes through this loop and inserts into this hole. But before we pin the cabin shifter in the home position, we're going to go out in the engine compartment and open the cables. So to open these cables, what we do is we grasp the ring and compress the spring, and while at the same time we just turn it until it stays, all the fingers are splayed like that, and it'll just stay like that. We'll do the same thing for both the front to back cable, which is the lower cable, as well as the side to side cable. All right, now that our cables are open, we're gonna make sure that the transmission's in neutral so that the selector shaft with the counterweight can move up and down freely. And what we're gonna do is we just press down a little bit while at the same time we're feeling with the locking lever. Now I've done this a bunch, so I just got it in the right spot, but see, this is not the right spot, and then as we bring this down, you can feel it just drop on in there. And when it drops on in there all the way, it'll turn up a little bit. Now, the 5-speed transmission is identical in concept. It's just that the side-to-side cables on the other side, the cables are reversed, but the locking mechanism is exactly the same. So you just press down a little bit while at the same time pushing in. And when you find the happy spot, then it'll slide in all the way, and the selector shaft will be locked down a little bit, and it'll only move a little bit. So now that both transmissions are in the home position and the cable ends are open, we're going to go back inside the car and pin the cabin shifter. So now that the cable ends are open, this stick will more or less move somewhat freely. It's catching on the rungs of the cables, but you know, it will move around. And this is a precision fit pin, so fitment's a little bit tight. And you just drop it to the first loop, and you just work it back and forth, until it's down as far as it'll go. And now the cabin side is also locked. So now with the trans and the cabin side locked in the home position, we'll go back out into the engine compartment, and we're going to release our cables. The front to back cable, which is the lower cable, 5-speed and 6-speed, and you pretty much just go ahead and turn the knurled ring, and the spring will snap, and that locks all the fingers together on the cable, and that position's locked in. The side to side cable is a little bit more critical. For that one, I like to gently push down on the selector shaft and only drop down 1 millimeter or so. I like to get in here and just wiggle this just to make sure things aren't bound, and then you do the same thing. Then we come around here to our locking pin, and we just rotate that guy, and it'll pop on out like that. And there shouldn't be any tension on the locking pin because the cables are holding the transmission in the home position. So we'll go back in the cabin, and we'll just give our pin a twist and a wiggle while we're pulling up, and it'll come on out. We'll just go and make sure we've got all our gears. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and reverse. That's about it.